Welcome back to another episode, everybody. Hey, look who learned how to use the fader thing.
Wow.
Anyways, my name's Emery Wolf. Joining me is
Nick Lamb.
And we are just two camera guys. This is a podcast where we're going to talk about all things camera.
Number 13 podcast about camera gear in the world.
Oh, yeah. Number 13, folks. Yeah. Maybe by this time next year, we can move up to number 12.
Yeah. Who knows what the future holds?
Do you remember what that list was? Like who that was from at all?
Nope. But I'm talking about it a lot. I'll take number 13.
I assume at some point we will have posted a link to that somewhere just to prove that we're not wrong.
We should put it on our Facebook actually and our Instagram.
Yeah, we'll figure
number
it out.
13.
So a couple episodes ago, we wrote down a pile of ideas for podcasts, and now we're going to address questions that did not come from that list at all.
Yeah. Well, we're prepared though. That's what I like. We've got ideas.
Do you know what? Actually, Nick, I'm going to start with a non-camera question.
Okay.
Is that a good way to start a podcast?
I love it.
Okay.
I was going to ask you about, you were worried about pop-ups coming up, so I didn't even want to know what websites you were going to.
No, it's just because that's downloading the last podcast there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the question I want to ask you, Nick, and this will run into a camera question later, so just hold on, kids. Bear with us. But it's something we like to talk about. It's about finances. And I want to know, Nick, what are some small financial changes people can do for themselves that will make their financial stance better?
Oh, I love talking about financial questions. So, you know what's funny? This is my opinion here. There's a small select group of people that can figure out all of this stuff on their own and do great. And then for the rest of us, and I would say me and you included in this group, it's the budget. It all comes down to the budget. And it makes no sense from an intellectual point of view, because it's like, well, what I spend is what I spend. So what's it going to matter? As long as if I just am being cheap, I'm going to have money at the end. And it's like, it's hard to fully grasp it until you've budgeted and actually stick to it and track it, how much money you can save from doing that. So just by cutting out coffees or whatever from Starbucks, or eating out less, like all of that helps. But unless you're tracking and knowing where your money's going, it always seems to just end up the same at the end of the month.
Yeah, I think what you said breaks down into two parts for me, and it took me a bit to get to the first part. But the first thing I want to say with budgeting, that's what I used to say all the time as well. And I've come to realize, like, there's a lot of people out there who that stresses them out.
Like budgeting stresses them out.
Yeah, right. Like, I'll pick on my daughter for an example. Okay. She doesn't like this idea that, like, if you set something up and then you have to stick to it. And I'm like, well, no, you don't have to stick to it at all. You can change it as you go.
Yeah.
And she can't, like, she can't wrap her head around that. She works in like perfects. And if you do step one, it'll lead to step two, and you have to do it in that order.
Now so I can get where the stress but to me, it stresses you out not having a plan. I'd much rather have a plan. And so let's pretend eating out, because that's actually an easy one. So let's say you'd budgeted $100 a month to eat out, and you'd already gone past that. And then your brother comes into town and he wants to go to a restaurant or whatever. And it's like, oh, crap. So then you got to make a choice. Okay, do I not go to so you could either have him over to your house and fix it that way, or you could slide some of your grocery money into your eating out money and figure that out later. Like there's levers to adjust, or you could take it out of your fun money for the month. Like there's ways to do it without breaking your budget. You just have to know that at a certain point in the month, you will have to say no.
Yeah. I think too, like what I'm trying to get at is that like even just the word budget conjures something in people's mind, and it's not necessarily a positive thing. And I actually think like one of the words you used, plan, is a good word to use, not a budget.
Ooh,
This is just a plan, not a
yeah.
budget.
It's a
Or
spending plan or
yeah,
savings plan.
the other thing that like struck me, and you also said this, but and it's the second part, what I actually find more valuable than setting my budget at, March 1st or whatever the date is, it's the tracking throughout the month and knowing what I'm spending, watching what I'm spending, where I'm spending it. And that's got less to do with like, oh, I can't have Starbucks today, and more just it puts me more in control.
Yeah. And it's sometimes it's in control in a way that you wouldn't even expect. Because I don't mean to keep picking on your daughter, but in a
Keep picking on
way,
her. I pick on her all the time.
so if she was seeing it as a limiting factor, where it's like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to do this and I'm not going to be able to do that. But I've been on vacations where we budgeted, and you'll go, yeah, we can go to that nice restaurant. I'm looking at the budget. We still have $4,000 left in this vacation budget, or 3,000. There's a lot of money left, and our flights are already bought, and our hotels are already paid, and it's almost freedom to be able to go do that thing that you were wanting to do, because you know that it's not going to affect any of the bills on the back end.
Yeah. But for those people who don't like budget, I'm really trying to shift that wording to plan and to tracking. And those are the things that are important, not so much the quote unquote budget.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's still a budget. I follow Ramit Sethi all the time, and he does what he calls a conscious spending plan. And he's sort of like anti-budget, but it's realistically it's like a type of budget. His is like a simplified form, and it's actually I think that could help people out as well.
Yeah.
But again, he's using the word plan.
I like the sound of it. It's a plan, it's a budget. Yeah. Yeah. If the budget scares you, just come up with a plan.
Do you know
The
what?
same way you
Like,
do anything else in life. You come up with a plan and then you'd execute it.
right. The other important piece with tracking too is then you actually know what you're spending on. So just an example is like I've seen it like where on in 2016 you're like Amazon Prime for free shipping, yes sir, under whatever email I had at that time. And 2 years later, Amazon Prime for TV, yes sir. And then all of a sudden you've got two Amazon Prime accounts. I didn't do this, by the way, but I've seen it. And,
that's
and
awesome.
You're paying for it. And I've seen people pay for it for like 5 years, and Amazon doesn't care, right?
No.
They're just being like, yeah, give us money. Sure. Great. So I've seen that done. And again, tracking allows you to actually see that because you're actually paying attention to where your money's going.
Yeah, I like that.
One of the other things I'm going to say too, like with planning, is setting goals. I think is another huge thing that people can do.
So what kind of goals do you set?
Mine are, it's funny, but like, so most of mine are like, I'm going to say very practical, almost like emergency fund type goals. Emergency fund is a goal, and I set like an amount per year. By the end of the year, I want to have this amount into my emergency fund. I also set goals for things like vacations, set goals for things like car maintenance. So again, practical things, and then the vacations is probably like the unpractical thing, but maybe still practical. And then the other thing, again, I'm going to bring them up. Ramit Sethi talks about with your savings, do whatever you can do now to save into like an RRSP or TFSA, but then like next year, up it by 1%.
Ooh.
And like I kind of like that idea, or that like goal of just 1% the next year. So yeah, goals I think are good. And then another thing where I'm trying to really get into is a little more automation. So again, I like the physical control. I like to know money in, money out, but at the same time, like uh, for a goal like a TFSA and 1% more, for me to do that, all I need to do is bank transfer this amount of money. Boop, done every other week or every month or however you do it. And then review it next year. January comes. Well, what's 1% more? Oh, that's $22. Yeah, I'll be fine without $22. Boop, done, automated.
Yeah. Nice. I like that.
Yeah. So, anyways, I do think, and then the last thing I'm going to say, which I think I'll run in this into the camera stuff, is actually I'm going to say two things. A financial buddy is always good too.
You know what? It is fun. Because if you there's a lot of ideas that kind of run around in your head, and me and you have been through this, and we've both had ideas where it's like once you really talk it out, it's like, well, that's not the sharpest idea around. And then there's other ideas where it's like, yeah, that actually makes sense. And so for the budget, for example, me and you, I would say, or sorry, spending plan, probably 5 years ago, we were both kind of getting into it, and it really fed off of each other because you would be like, oh man, how am I going to do this thing? Oh, I'm doing that. And then you're automating idea of like breaking stuff down into percentages that you'd heard from somebody. All of a sudden it's gets me thinking, yeah, percentages, and not just the budget for the month. It's like you're saving percentages and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, having the buddies can be awesome, I think.
Yeah. And we've kind of lost that a bit in this day and age, like that like communication with people that can help you out. Like your neighbors can help you out with things, right? It's okay to ask people for
Yeah.
help. So I
And
think that's important too.
And I've been surprised. So there's a couple people that I've talked finances about, and they're just not interested or not comfortable with it. But for the most part, I'd say over 90% of people, when I talk to them about finances, are more than willing to open up, and either you'll learn something or they'll learn something. So yeah. And I don't know, you never really know which way it's going to go half the time.
Yeah. And like, man, like the other thing too is like a buddy will keep you accountable. Like if you're going to do some dumb things, like
Yeah.
blow $30,000 on a brand new red camera, a buddy might keep you in check for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a good thing because it's, I phoned you, well, and you phoned me too about camera gear purchases of like, hey, try to talk me out of this because I'm not sure if this is a great idea.
Was it the last one too? You're like, talk me out of these likes, and I'm like, no, just buy them.
You know what's funny? I don't even remember what that was.
I think it was lights, wasn't it?
Was it the lights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing too that I would say is that you don't need everything. We do live in excess. And the lower you can make like your cost of living in general, the better you're going to be. Like we live in Canada. We are all privileged here. We like look at our homes, right? Like your garage looks like a house already, Nick.
It does. I was just going to say we live in a small house, but we do. Like we live in a 1,000 square foot house, which I guess maybe some people would consider big, but
yeah. Like, do you need a $500,000 house? No, you just need something that'll fit you, take care of it, put the money and time and effort into it, and it'll pay off for you in the long run. And with that too, it goes into camera gear, right? So like, do you need the latest, greatest camera?
Oh, well, I want the latest, greatest camera. Like I want it very bad.
I did not tell you what my one question is that I want to actually get to eventually, but it's along this lines.
I want to go mirrorless. I really do. But similar to buying a new car, I just can't do that yet. Like I want to wait a little bit. I want to be able to pick up it used, get it at a good price. My C200 still works great. It's getting older now. It's probably 7 years old, that body from when it came out.
Yeah.
But still looks great. So it's, nothing's on fire. I don't need to upgrade right now. Would it be nice? Yeah. Probably will eventually. I don't think I can keep using it when it's, 10 years from now, but
Yeah. So how do you determine the gear you need?
well, I'm not a good example. I've got too much gear, too much stuff.
I think we all do, to be honest.
Even your tripod, you were getting rid of your motorized slider. I have a slider. Emery was like, I don't use my motorized slider. Do you want it? And it took me about 0.5 seconds to just be like, yeah, I want it. I love that thing. That thing's awesome. Can't wait.
So it's the
Motorized
next shelf
slider.
of
This is
shame. Is
great.
that what you're saying?
Well,
It
I
went
haven't
from
used it
my
yet.
shelf of shame to your shelf of shame.
I actually saw it back there and I was like, what is in here? And I opened it up and I was like, oh yeah, this is Emery's slider. This is awesome.
Hey, it's not mine anymore. It's yours now.
So I'm not a great example of this. I
You
I
know,
don't know. I got too
yeah,
much gear.
I'll put something around this. So like when you go on and you're like, I'm starting out, what lens should I get? What lens does everybody tell you to get?
Oh yeah. Okay. So you gotta get the 50. That's what everybody says. Get a
And why?
50 mil prime because it actually makes you look like you know what you're doing. 'Cause you
Right.
can,
And it's also the cheapest lens you can buy in any system.
yeah. So for $200, you can look like a professional photographer. Open that puppy up to what do they come at, the kit lens, or not the kit lens, the
I
cheap
think it's 1.8 or something.
1.8. Yeah, crank it to 1.8. You look like a rock star. It looks awesome.
Yeah. And for the value, it is worth it.
Yeah.
So like dollar for donuts, it is the best money you can put money towards. And that is why, or best thing you can put money towards. And that's why every photographer recommends it. It's not because there's something magical about the 50 mil
Yeah.
range. Like I kind of, this is, I think why like that, like, what lens do you use as a landscaper kind of bugs me. It's like, well, you use everything. And
Yeah.
that's ultimately like what you get to, but a 50 is a great way to learn and it's the cheapest way to learn. And that's why they all recommend it. With that said, is there a single professional photographer or videographer that has that lens in their kit and uses it regularly?
I would say, so for me now, I've got the 1.250. The
Because
only reason why I prefer that one is because the focus is quieter, because I use autofocus a lot now, and it's kind of rattling around on those old cheaper lenses.
yeah,
But
and it's a little sharper, makes
yeah, a
the
little
bouquet look
sharper.
a little bit nicer,
Yeah,
and it's all those things that just make it a little more edge. But again, I mean, you're starting out,
you're starting
it's cheap
out
one.
$200. You don't need autofocus. You can, for a little sit down interview, to make it look like it does right now, or with Emery's background, you could do that quite
Actually, point
easily.
point in case, this lens is the cheap 35 millimeter RF lens.
Yeah.
So I think this lens is like $350.
So yeah, $350, you get a great look. So yeah, speaking of 35s, 35 is my next purchase. I'm gonna get the nice 35. So see, yeah, I'm already, not the person.
So actually, that's kind of my next question too. Then, like, so, and this gets into what you talked about before, but like, what is the next lens that you think is your best dollar for donuts lens out there, or next purchase you would make that's the most efficient?
So how I did it when I started was two lenses, because I wanted something tight and something wide. So based on, at the time, I found a good deal on an 85 1.2, so I bought the 85, and then the 16 to 35. And then I had my my kit lens. So I had those 3 lenses. And really, you know what's the joke about all of this? My 85 and my 16 to 35, those are the 2 lenses I use the most to this day. I hardly touch the 100 macro. I pull up my 50 quite a bit now, but that's a luxury. Really, I could get away with either the 50 or the 85. You move your camera in, move it out. The 1 to 400 just sits in my case. I never use it. I don't even know what other lenses I got. I got a couple more in there. I don't even know what they are. Don't ever touch them.
I don't know if you've seen that too, so I lied. It's $650 on sale at Don's, but I think I bought mine for like $300 used.
I thought
It was
you bought
around that
yours
mark.
used. And yeah, that's if I so let's pretend. So I think this is maybe the question you're going for. Could you save up money on the side? So let's pretend I was working a regular job, construction or whatever, like I did when I first started. Uh, just peel away $2,000 to get going. Yeah, you buy a used tripod, get a pretty decent one. You don't even need a great camera. Get a couple of prime lenses, you'd be off and running.
I feel like that'll cost more than $2,000 though.
You think so?
Well,
You
but
get a
a
used
camera
camera.
and a couple. I mean, if you're getting, if you're buying used, maybe, and if you can find lenses like this 35 for or the 50
So
for
you wouldn't be able
for cheap on
you
used.
wouldn't be able to go RF, but you could go something. You
I
could
think you
find
could buy
a
like an RP for like $500 now, maybe 600.
okay. So if you were going RF, yeah, but you could even go with you could find a 5D Mark III or something like that.
Yep.
Reasonably cheap, $500, I'm guessing. Maybe I'm
Yep.
crazy. And some EF lenses.
Yeah, and
I feel
then
like you could do it for $2,000. Get a
and
nice little
sensor.
rig.
Yeah, probably. And the sensor on that would be comparable to something like the RF stuff. So
Yeah,
just because it's good enough, or it was the higher end of its day.
yeah. And
Um,
then just the one thing I would get newer is I'd just get the DJI Mic Mini or something like that because a lot of the audio solutions can get expensive, but that's a nice little stopgap, I would say.
yeah. Um, I guess before I'm asking the next question, I'm going to give you a bit of a hot take. I actually think the best, your next buy after the Nifty 50 that you should probably buy is the 78 to 200 f 2.8.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah.
and
I don't have one, but that would have solved a lot of problems for me over the years.
yeah, and my only reason for that is just because of how versatile it
Mm-hmm.
is. So if you're shooting video, it'll help you out with everything that you do in video, every close up, everything.
It looks
If
good.
you want to do portraits, it's next to the 85. I actually prefer that. It's what we shoot our portraits on at work with.
Hmm.
The last thing I'll say, which is also like why we went to this decision at work, was your iPhone also shoots good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So at a wider spectrum, I can just use my iPhone for things. And I do mix things. So the 70 to 200 is things I can't do with my iPhone. So again, it just ends up being like a real workhorse lens, and I would go the expensive route because the extra, the 2.8 instead of 4, does allow you to do those things like portrait stuff or night stuff if that's what you're into.
Yeah. I
And it
guess
just
where I was kind of thinking was you're just starting out, you don't know if you're going to be able to make money. So if you go hog wild and get the nice RF camera, the nice RF lenses, you're $10,000 before you know it.
oh,
And
you're more than
then
that now.
10 or 20 grand and you might be years before you're getting $1,000 payday.
Yeah, right. It just makes everything so much more difficult.
And then by the time you're getting paid, that gear's old and you basically wasted your $10,000. You're gonna get half of the money back on when you sell it. Yeah, it could add up quick.
Yeah. Like the camera, you get an R6, it's $3,000, right? And then say you want to get even just a simple zoom, your 15 to 35 or even your 14 to 35 still going to cost you about $2,000. I believe the 15 to 35 is about $3,000 as well. The 70 to 200, which I just said, is also $3,000. Does that cover you a lot? But you've hit $9,000 in 3 purchases.
Mm-hmm. And these are depreciating assets. The lens is not as much as the camera. So you're not going to lose as much money on the lenses. They're a little safer of a buy, but
yeah, this is another great workhorse lens to be cheaper if you're going the new route, the 24 to 105 f4. Again, it doesn't have to be Canon, it can be any format, but that's where you're going to save money, and it'll be your workhorse lens like a 70 to 200.
But you're not going to get the shots off of that lens. So let's say you buy that lens, you're not wowing anybody with your 24 to 105 footage.
I'm going to disagree. That's how I started. Do you know what? Let's get into that topic just after. But I guess the other thing that, like, when it comes to finances, Nick, is should you finance your gear?
That's a great question. I wish we had some stats on this, because I know most people that I know have financed gear. So I'm not going to name any names, but there's a couple of local guys. Did you finance gear?
My whole business was started by financing.
Okay. So tell me what you thought it, because I've got opinions, but I want to hear, you've done it. So what do you think? Did it work? Would you do it again? What made you finance the gear instead of just buying it?
It's so, like, and I want to rephrase this. So what I did was, I don't know what it's called now, but it was like called SAS Start back then. It was a small business loan that I took out. I think it was like $10,000. And then I did essentially buy all the gear with that money. And so bought a computer, bought 2 little video cameras, bought a DSLR, bought the 105 to, or sorry, the 24 to 105, the kit with the DSLR, a bunch of other little stuff. And then I think I also put in another 2 or 4 grand of my own to actually start it. Then it took me about 3 years to pay it off. I was pretty, like, diligent on it because it was like really the first loan I'd had, and it was, aside from like student loans and whatever, and I really didn't know how to handle it, and my idea was just like, pay it off. I don't want this thing. I don't want to deal with it. I just want it done with. So I worked pretty hard at just paying that off. I had no idea what I was realistically doing, but it got me the gear.
Now, were you paying it off with money that you were making from the gear, or were you paying it off with your 9 to 5 job?
Money from the gear. So my 9 to 5 job basically paid bills, and everything that I made from the business was pretty much going to paying it off.
Okay. So then I guess in a way you were motivated to make the business work because you had that loan hanging over you.
Yeah. You know, and the funny part too is, like, looking back, you said, would I do it again? And honestly, I'm not sure I would. So after that too, basically, then I started using the money from the business to buy more crap. And that's when I started growing and expanding more. And actually starting to get better, and starting to have like a better product. So again, would I do it again? No, because what actually made me better was doing the work. And if I could have focused more on that, I think I would have been better served off when I was just more focused on paying things down.
So how would you, I'm playing devil's advocate because I obviously agree that you shouldn't finance camera gear. I shouldn't say obviously, but those that know me would know that. Why? How would you possibly get started if you didn't finance it?
I think it's those things. So this goes back to what we talked about before. Have a plan. So again, you can. Let me rephrase this too. Me paying off my loan was also a plan, right? Like I did have a plan, and that's probably what got me through it. If I didn't have a plan, I'd probably still be paying off that loan.
Yeah.
But again, have a plan. And I think it's like, what do you want to do? Focus what you want to purchase towards that and spend your money, save up for it, spend your money towards that. So, for an example, if I want to be a portrait photographer, buy the best, cheapest camera you can get. You know what? If it's an RP, which I think like retailed for $1,000 new, sure, do that, and then buy that nifty 50 for $200, and you can take portraits and you can start doing it and you can start generating money, and it's going to take you a lot less time than 3 years to generate the $1,500 you put into it. And then once you double that and you have $3,000, then you can maybe start considering other things, but like keep generating money and think about what you're doing.
You know what? You're right, because you can't, I shouldn't say you can't, but it's unlikely that you're going to start, because I mainly do corporate clients now, but it's unlikely that you're going to start with some of the larger businesses or corporate clients. You're going to have to start with some of the smaller businesses and some of the smaller startup clients that are in a similar space that you are, where you can offer them some value, a good deal on some promotional content for them, and work that way, kind of work your way up. You can't, because if you just go and buy the gear, you really don't have the skill set to service the corporate clients yet, or the higher end ones. But if you start with the smaller stuff, you can kind of, then your skills can kind of grow with your gear in a way.
Yeah, have a plan how to get there. When I wrote my business proposal for that initial loan, the lady I got it from actually said, like, this was one, like, I was concerned about it. Like, oh my God, did I do this right? Is this good enough? I had like this 5-year plan. I was going to pay it off in 5 years. And then I was going to switch to corporate stuff at like year 4 and all this stuff. Right. And I was like, I have no idea. Like, if I'm looking at this, I failed.
Yeah.
but she got it and she was like, this is actually one of the better applications I've seen. Like, so don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, cool. And
yeah.
But again, just have that plan. Nick, with that said, and you just sort of touched on it, and it is the place I wanted to go with this. So throughout this whole thing, you've said a couple things. You said that you know, when you're starting out, you want to make things look good.
Mm-hmm.
And then you basically just talked about the client.
Okay.
And I'm saying have a plan. So I think those 3 things go together. But what you want, so I want to be a portrait photographer.
Okay.
At the very core, or say that's what I want.
Yeah. Okay.
Is not, I want this camera and I want this lens, and that will make me a portrait photographer. What makes you a portrait photographer is getting clients. And what they want is a portrait photo. They do not care what lens you are using. They do not care what camera you're using. And I think that's like where people go wrong. So in your scenario, what do you see? Like, what does Nick want versus what does Nick clients want?
Oh, interesting.
And I
So
bet those 2 things do not line up whatsoever.
you know what's funny? I saw this, I don't know if it was a documentary or a TV show or something. This was years ago, but they were following around photographers. And this one photographer, he was a fashion photographer, but he had bad eyes. So he would use a point and shoot camera. So he didn't use a DSLR camera. So, but he'd use a point and shoot. But the guy was like super artistic, could get the models to relax, or I don't know, whatever he did to make the models comfortable, position them in the right way, get the background right. But his photos were just wild, like unbelievable fashion photos. But what would happen is they would the end client would often be like, what kind of camera, like, because his camera was so bad, it was just the camera, like the literal point and shoot old school 35 mil camera that everybody would own, and they would be wondering what's going to happen to our photos. But because this guy was, his resume essentially would speak for itself, the like the intermediary, like the studio that was hiring him, would be like, just wait till you see the results. And every time they'd blow him away, like better than what me and you would get with a really nice camera, because this guy understood how to make the models sit the right way. He knew the background, just had that artistic flair to it. But so that's kind of always stuck with me, going, it doesn't really matter the gear, it's how you use it.
Yeah. So let me, because you have not answered my question whatsoever.
No, I forgot what your question was.
I'm going to rephrase this. So you've gotten corporate clients. How did you do that? What was your sales pitch for them?
Mine's never been the greatest sales pitch. So whenever I am discussing a video, it's never about me. It's always about what they want and how we can accomplish what they want done.
Yeah. And
I've
what you want
had
is not what they want.
Yeah. I've literally only had, in the last 5 years, I've had one person ask me for a reel and ask me for prior work. The rest of it is somebody will recommend you, or they'll have heard about you somehow. I won't get into that side of it right now, because I'm not the greatest at that side. But once you get into the meeting with the person, it's not about you anymore. It's all about them.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, even like at a simpler form. So say you're doing what I did to start out and you're shooting wedding videos to pay off gear. The process has this weird like back and forth. Like, so people do go out and see your stuff. Other people are recommending you. I mean, obviously you can market yourself, especially with social media in this day and age. You could probably do a better job than I ever did with that. But again, they're coming to you. And I used to sort of treat it like a little bit like, you've seen my stuff, you know what I do, you know what you're going to get. Is that what you want?
Ooh.
And that was sort of like where that shift happened. And it was asking them like what they actually wanted and getting that from you, and then being like, well, this is what I can do for you. So it did shift to what they wanted, but it did actually take that meeting to do that.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my sales pitch too, right? Again, it was all about me until that meeting, and then it was all about them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very little. I would think this is in most sales, because you've been to the car dealer where the guy just yammers on about the car that does this, it's got that, it's got this, it's got that. And then you've met the car salesman that's like, oh, what do you like? What kind of car are you interested in? What would you be using it for? Where are you going? And that guy's the guy that's going to sell you the car, not the guy that's telling you how many horsepower this car that he wants to sell has.
Yeah. So I think like the big point too is like when you, it doesn't matter where you work. If you're in some sort of sales thing and you have a product or something to sell to other people, you're going to have your list of things that you want. You need to make sure you're hitting the list of things your client wants or whoever you're selling things to. And that's sort of like the point. And most times, we get so, I'm going to say selfish for lack of a better term in what we want. I want to have the 50 1.2 lens because it'll look amazing and it'll set me apart, and all that. Your client doesn't care.
No. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they don't care.
And
They
yeah,
don't care at all.
so basically when you do create a plan, that is probably the most important question to answer yourself. And it's, what does my client want? And how does that get me to what I want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So kind of the reverse thing. You know what? I'm going to go full chat GPT on us here. And by chat GPT, I should call it something else because it's just me summarizing this episode.
Yeah. Okay.
We discussed how to better yourself financially is generally having a plan. There's a bunch of other little things that you can put into that plan. Then we discussed how you can fund your camera stuff, which is generally have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've gone into this, you versus your client. And again, that is generally have a plan.
Yeah.
So like if we had a moral for this episode, think things through, have that plan, write it out. Man, that is a hot take of the day. Biggest
yeah.
tip, write things down. Like if you do not write things down and track them, for an example, you lose them, man. Like writing is a huge part of all this stuff too.
Yeah. You know what? You actually tell me that all the time because I've got a lot of ideas. And you'll always tell me, just write them down. Just write them down. Just write them down.
Do you ever write them down?
I got to get better at it. But because what happens is then it'll come up and it'll be like, well, let's go through those ideas. I don't remember a single one of them.
The funny part too is like, so we had that podcast. I asked you like, give me 6 things. I'll give you 6 things. And then you sent me like the 6 things the next day. And my mind was like, I was not prepared for this, Nick.
Yeah, I actually did it.
And then the funny part too is like these other questions, again, none of this entire podcast came based off conversations from the last podcast and what we were talking about. And all I did was write it down. And that's the only way I would have remembered any of this and put it together.
Yeah, I love it.
So there you have it. Nick, with that is another podcast done. Unless you got some final parting words for the folks.
Oh, the parting words. Well,
this is the best segment we have of the podcast every day where we just struggle for a last minute 30-second thing to say. And then
this is the part that we don't have a plan for. No, I want to make it somewhat about camera gear where you don't need to have the best of everything. It's okay to have something that as long as it can deliver the final product, it's good enough for now. Can you upgrade it later? Yeah, it's fine. But like I bought a flag kit years ago because I thought I needed a flag kit. Have I used the flag kit? Yes. But could I have gotten by without it? Yeah. Probably would have been better saving the money at the time and spending it later. But yeah, just be patient with your gear. You'll get it eventually.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a great way to sign it off. So once again, thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you on the flip flop.
See ya.